There's still a lot of shirts, just not necessarily the size you want.
Yes.
So if you're good at sewing,
Butterscotch
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 196 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam and I have reduced my caffeine intake back to 0.
I'm Sam and I ate a Lara bar.
Oh, you're still going?
I don't know. We're all just throwing out facts.
This podcast sponsored by Lara. No, it's not.
It's not, unfortunately. But if they want, give me a call, Lara.
Lara, give us a call.
Who's in charge of those bars?
This is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is March Doubly Hafton, 2019.
I have no idea what day that is. What?
Let's break it down. Doubly?
That's 20.
Half 10.
Half ton. No, half 10.
Oh, 25.
Yeah.
Dang.
March Doubly Hafton, 2019.
Sounds like a name for a good NPC. March Doubly Hafton. He'll sell you some goods.
Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything could happen on this show. There's going to be profanity. So if you don't like the curses, you can scoot.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's talk about...
We're in a mood this morning.
Okay. We'd also like to thank our supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net who are donating to support the podcast. We also have a new human in our money pit.
Excellent.
So we'd like to thank Preston for the generous donation, as well as our recurring supporters. Thank you all very much. Let's talk about steak.
Mm-hmm. I got some questions for you guys.
All right.
So on Friday, we got back from GDC and Thursday night. And on Friday, I was like, I need to just do something because all I've been doing is talking for 12 hours a day for 4 days. So I thought, what better way to do a thing than to cook some stuff, right? At home.
I mean, it depends on your goals.
Please
but
follow.
Yep.
Follow it. So
I'm with you.
I talked to my wife and I was like, I'm going to make you a steak. Let's do this.
This is also a really good thing to choose to make because all you do is you cook it.
Well, so this is kind of what happened. So get these steaks. They're super nice. Make beets as well, which are so delicious.
Good choice.
And so make some roasted
Also,
beets.
that allows you to be started later when you
pee or anything. Yeah. Anytime fluids come out of you.
Death, yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy, which did happen actually for the follow-up
days. You always
days.
Forget every time. And then you look down there, you're like, oh my God, I'm dying. Like, no, it's just the beets.
Just the beets.
I don't really eat beets. Maybe for that reason.
Give it a shot.
Might be like a PTSD situation.
They're both delicious and hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Great. It's a good prank to play on your friends. Have them over for beets to scare the shit out of them like a day later.
Yeah.
It's just time delay thing. But anyway, so go to cook these steaks. Cook them. And to do it exactly, by the book, you sear them in a cast iron pan for 2 minutes each side. Throw that thing into the oven to finish them. This is apparently how most restaurants do it. And they're delicious steaks. But I was eating it. And I've been eating just a lot of Chinese food mainly, but also just a lot of very spiced food for the last 2 years. I actually eat steak probably once every 6 months now. Ate these steaks. And they even had like a garlic herb butter thing that I had made. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is boring as fuck. Yep. I don't know.
I'm right there with
you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so my wife was eating it and she was, she's enjoying it. But I just took a few bites and I was like, I don't care about this. I don't even know if I want to finish this.
You've become a foodie.
Apparently.
You didn't
I was
know
curious because we grew up on steak. That was like the thing.
Yeah, that was like our dessert,
It was like
if you always wanted.
Mm-hmm, and if you were gonna have like a fancy meal, it was steak.
Yep.
Every single time. And then I'm realizing that like steakhouses, it's funny because they cost a lot of money, right? If you go to a steakhouse to get a steak, but the total preparation time for steak is almost zero, right? You just take the meat.
It's all about the cut of meat.
Yeah. You sprinkle salt on it and then throw it in the pan for 6 minutes and it's done.
Yeah.
Well, this is why you go to one of those places where they
aged meat,
where they age the steak, because that's where the prep time is like 6 months.
So this is the thing: is you're now in that window or you're now that time of your life where you can no longer just eat regular old plebeian steak.
Plebe steak.
Yeah.
You now have to go in for the super fancy, very expensive aged steaks.
This is how you know that you're in the 1%.
Yeah.
How does it taste better from being old?
I wondered the same thing, and I don't know, but
Is it
true?
the same
Real
way
good.
that cheese is way better than milk? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to there's a place in St. Louis. I think it's called like the Twisted Tree or something. And I went
This
there.
podcast sponsored by Twisted Tree.
And I went there, and they kept talking about how like we age our steaks for a really long time, like so much longer than any other place in the city. And I'm like, that sounds like a bad move, you know? You would think fresh, right? I want it like right off of the animal, immediately cooked. No, apparently something happens when it's aged properly, and it just, man.
The only thing that is good fresh is fruit. And even fruit, if you just let it sit there for a long time, now you have booze.
I think
That's true.
I think fish is really good fresh.
That's because you've never had
Well,
aged
no,
fish.
yeah, because apparently
That's true.
when fish is prepared properly and not like suffocated to death over 20 minutes, it can be aged like a steak, and then it's like a whole other world of food.
I guess how does it taste different? Because it just tastes more like steak. Because that's kind of what I'm bored about. I don't know. I ate it and I was like, this is not.
It tastes more like a good steak, I think. But the point still stands though, which is it's boring as fuck.
Yeah,
you know, like it can taste good and be boring as fuck, which is kind of so. That's
actually exactly what it was.
Yeah, it
I was
tastes
like,
good
this is
and it's
objectively tasty. Also,
my
don't
bigger
care.
problem with steak is the chewing requirement. You have to chew that fucker so much. Like, it's constant chewing.
That's true.
And like my jaw's getting tired, and the whole time I'm like, this isn't even that good. Why am I even putting myself through this? And so I can only eat maybe like 2 ounces of steak at a time before I'm just like, fuck this
I'm
thing.
done.
This is now in the fridge. Later on, I'm going to cut this into little tiny bits.
Give me some baby food.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys sure have opinions about steak.
Well, I did.
I used to love steak.
Yeah.
Now I just don't give a fuck.
But I was realizing, I was like, this is clearly one of those cultural things. Growing up, it was the important food, right? If you had an event, there was steak involved, and it was fancy, whatever else. And now that we've aged, we've gotten more cultural experience.
So maybe the problem is like we've aged, and that means we've
not.
become much more refined, like how a steak does.
Yes, exactly.
Now a regular steak hasn't caught up, so now you got to eat.
Yeah, it's not mature enough.
Yeah, you got to eat an aged steak
But
so
I've
that
also-
it matches you.
Right. But I've even taken this even further because I actually don't even like meat that much anymore.
What?
Yeah.
Like any of it?
Just in general, like because every time I eat meat, I'm like, this is a good seasoning, I guess. Sometimes, but usually just the part that is just the meat part is the worst part of whatever I'm eating. Because
That's
everything
true
else
of
is
a
like,
lot of food, though. Like if you just eat rice, if you just eat a bean,
exactly. But this brings us back to the point is that for meat to be good, it's got to be particulate meat matter, so that it can be actually fully saturated in all the flavors. Because all the good stuff is all the shit you put on the food.
The meat.
Food itself sucks.
Yeah, because
I think that's just a
here's
fact.
the thing. Yeah, if you ever see a video where they're like, here's how you prepare the perfect potato. And then they never just go
Fill with butter.
They
Fill with
never
salt.
go just cook it because potatoes are so good.
Although sweet potatoes are pretty
Sweet potatoes
fucking
are delicious. That was the thing I remember. I was like, back growing
really
up,
good,
we used
yeah.
to just load them up with brown sugar and
good.
marshmallows.
Turns out you don't even need to.
No, my wife just microwaved one.
All right,
The
so
first 6 months in,
so
I
I
was
think
like,
where
what are
we've
you
landed,
doing?
where we've landed is sweet potatoes are the perfect food.
They are.
Because
And then-
they come pre-seasoned with sugar.
Right, and then all other foods, even like cocoa beans or whatever, like you don't just they're apparently
No.
super bitter
Oh,
and
they're
terrible.
horrible,
Oh, yeah, no.
So what you do is you mix them with like lactose and sugars and all kinds of other stuff, and now you've got yourself a good treat.
Have you ever seen those videos? I saw a clip of this kid who was like so excited because he got a hold of a Hershey's cocoa box, like the cooking
Oh, yeah.
cocoa. And then he just like took a spoonful and just shoved it in his mouth and then had that sort of horrified realization, like, this is not what you thought it was going to be, child. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
you think I got pure cocoa.
It's going to be so good. It's
Yeah,
not.
not what you want.
It's the worst. It's the non-cocoa parts that make chocolate bars good.
Yeah.
actually.
Yep.
All right, so I think
That's all I needed to say about it. Just get that out there.
that's fair.
Yeah. Basically, the things that make food good are how old it is,
Apparently.
how much salt's on there,
And how old you are.
how old you are, how much fat's on there, and then how much other delicious things that are not food but that taste good are also on there.
Yep.
I
That's
did
sort of the summary.
now. I think it's Radio Lab. They've got a thing about bliss, about like people finding pure happiness.
Chase your bliss.
They had a video recording of this man who basically is a professional adventurer somehow. Somehow he's pulled this off. And he had a recording where he basically pre-plotted this route through, I don't know, Antarctica or some shit. And he went ahead in advance and buried sort of like caches of supplies for himself so that he wouldn't have to haul like 100 pounds of equipment. And so he was like 3 months into this hike. Like he's walking, and he just finds these caches of food. He's lost like 55 pounds or something like that. So he's basically starving. And he comes across his last cache, and he like was disoriented, and he didn't even remember like what he had put in there. And he found this bag of cheese doodles. And this man basically screamed with pure joy for like 3 whole minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And then he kept digging, and then he found like a chocolate bar, and then it was like 3 more minutes of screaming. I thought, I guess what I'm saying is it's also context,
Yeah, because I still like Cheez-Its now and then, Although if I eat too many of them, I'm like, oh yeah, these are actual garbage again.
But imagine if you found Cheez-Its.
If I'd been starving for months and then I got Cheez-Its.
So maybe the trick is not just to chase your bliss, but it's to bury your bliss
and forget
on the
about
path
it
in
for
front
a long
of you.
time.
Yeah.
And then be starving for a while.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then go find your bliss.
Because you can. That's when you can really appreciate.
It's like finding money in your pocket, sort of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, look at this. And then you can buy a snack with it,
Yes. All right. Well, let's talk about GDC.
Let's do that.
Game Developers Conference. We were there all last week.
We refer to it as Gdc, the mother of dragons.
Mm-hmm. Gdc.
Mm-hmm.
So for starters, we hosted a meetup on the Monday afternoon, which was super cool. We basically just posted up shop in the Yerba Buena Garden, which is this big park kind of near the convention center. And then people just kind of came.
Yeah, it was great.
We had about, I think, 30 to 40 people kind of coming in and out throughout.
About 20 concurrent players at any given time.
Peak concurrency.
Yeah. So we just got to kind of hang out and chat and talk shop with people about stuff, and
super fun.
It was great. Got to meet.
So thanks for coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and Joseph, whose last name we won't say because of doxing, but Joseph brought us cookies.
Thanks, Joseph. They were delicious.
Great. And then also got to meet somebody from CCP, who's the creators of EVE Online. Did not know we had any podcast listeners over there in Iceland, but that was super cool. So he got to hear my Space Brian story from a while back.
He said he shared it around the office, didn't he?
Nice. I think so, yeah. Got to meet, and then one of our students from our Wash U class came. And
he's now working at Apple.
Yeah, which is awesome. His dream.
Yeah. He's loving it over there. So that's kind of cool.
So yeah, we've just had, it was just nice to kind of we caught up with a bunch of people who we had sort of seen throughout, some folks who had come to Shenanacon and that kind of stuff. So it was just like a good kind of get together.
Yep.
And so thank you everybody who came. Probably we'll just do the same thing next year.
I think so. So it's one of the highlights for me of the whole week. Honestly.
Yeah, it's also a lot easier than hosting Shenanacon because we just
went to a park and stayed there.
Yep.
But much like Shenanacon, it was very cold.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, or cold enough. I think it was like 45 or something.
It was
kind of dipped
started
down.
hot when the sun was up, and then it got real cold all of a sudden.
Yeah. So we were all kind of shaking. I gave Sam my jacket in a
very gentlemanly
show of gentlemanly support.
And I assume you just flexed the rest of the time to keep warm.
Yeah. Well, it was more I shivered, which is sort of like a rapid flexing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how our GDC strategy has
evolved.
So this is now our 7th time as a studio.
Is it 7?
It's my 5th,
or maybe 8. We started. Our first one we went to was in 2014.
Yeah, we didn't go that first year.
Or not 2014.
No, because the first one I went to was in 2015.
Which was our third one. I
Right.
think it was 2013. Did we go after Telefight?
No,
we did.
I don't know. 6th or 7th, whatever it is. We've been going for a while.
enough damn times. Yeah, it's been interesting. I think when we started out, the goal was to basically try to attend all the talks, actually, and then as we've gotten both a deeper network, got to meet the people that we sort of find to be either our peers or people that we really look up to. Then it's transitioned from being completely talk focused in the beginning to now we literally don't buy the talk pass anymore.
Yeah, we just had expo passes.
And then we just hang out with folks that we know or do business stuff. And so it's been this really interesting, and that has gradually happened over about 5 or 6 years. So in terms of that idea of, networking taking time, I think that's probably the easiest example of it. This is
a slow burn.
Yeah, multiple people working literally all the time. Takes about 6 years before you get to a point where you're like, I can go to a meeting I can go to a conference for 4 days and have it be the case that I'm mainly meeting other people who we've talked to before.
Our calendar was very full.
It's very full, which is very fun. Though it was a little much on occasion in terms of just how much running around there was.
Yeah, there were a few times where we had to kind of
divide and conquer,
pre-plan who was going to go where, because we had multiple things going on at the same time, which is great. But yeah, like you said, it's a bit much.
Yeah, so these things they take a little while, but it's been fun. I think making that transition because it feels more. I guess when you're going under that previous model where it's like let's go to talks and then just talk to who sits next to you or whatever else. You're relying almost 100% on serendipity to get you something good out of the deal. And there's enough ad companies and stuff at GDC that's not super easy to do.
It's a minefield.
It's a minefield. You're really careful. But the sort of transition then from that has been really nice because it just feels like it's a very purposeful couple of days. We also used to go the whole week. So we would be there on Sunday. I think we even used to go on Saturday afternoon or something like that.
I think last year we left on Saturday.
Yeah. And then we stay all the way through Saturday. And then this year we said, we don't want to do that. Let's get the hell out of there as soon as possible. So we looked at when all of our meetings were, all of our most important meetings. All of them happened Monday through Wednesday last year. And so we're like, okay, let's
plan on that.
Try Thursday being the day we evacuate. And we did. And no one's gotten sick yet. So we somehow dodged the plague.
Yep. His first year.
First year. I think it's those last couple days.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I had the flu by
day 2, right?
Yeah, by mid GDC.
Yeah.
So this is better. I like this better.
This is much better. And part of our strategy there was we bought a huge bottle of vitamin C gummies and then just divided up the total number of gummies by the total days and how many people we had. And then everyone just had to eat that many gummies.
I was inhaling those things.
Notably, I wasn't. I just kind of carried on with my life.
Flex it off.
I just ate. I ate like 1 or 2, but I guess that's all you need.
Apparently, that was all it took.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. To be fair, I think it was like 267% of your daily vitamin C intake.
Yeah, and it does average over time. So I ate a couple of them, and then that just kind of carried me through, right?
Yep.
That's how science works.
Well, then I think we ended with another change to our strategy for next year, which is to find a hotel that was probably much further away.
I think so.
And just Uber.
And then just Uber there because
it's getting really bad.
Because the neighborhood's not great, and then the cost of the hotels of even medium ones, which is where we were staying, is very high. And so we figure, what if we just stay just somewhere else and then just Uber in every day?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take like a half-hour Uber to get in there if it means like
being comfortable.
Going back to a comfortable bed with an air conditioner, just those kinds of things.
Or just space.
Just space.
Somewhere you could sit down.
Yeah, in one of the rooms that we had it was 2 beds, which were 1 foot apart, and then there was a foot between each bed and the wall. So it was like the room was just big enough to fit 2 beds.
And then you had about 3 feet on the sort of foot end of the beds for, walking around. Yeah, that was.
So once you put your bag down, you now have 1 foot of space left.
Yep.
It was tight. Mm-hmm. So and that's quite expensive too for that amount of space. So I guess the question is, when it comes to those talks, because we've talked about, that was our primary focus at the beginning, and then we've kind of like,
and also giving talks was a big
giving talks, and then we kind of just trailed off on that. For a while it was like we would go and then we'd still attend some talks, but then kind of
peter out,
fewer and fewer. Mm-hmm. And so, what's the value of those?
Well, so in terms of going to them while you're at GDC, I still think there's tremendous value in it. It's just the case that it's much more hit or miss than if you have a lot of important meetings you're probably willing to give time to. But it is the sort of thing where I think the one thing people don't do, which has always kind of confused me, is if a talk is really good, you should go up and talk to the person immediately afterwards. Like, there's nothing more important than actually making that face-to-face connection, swapping business cards, or sending them an email or something like that afterwards, because people always put their contact information up.
Yeah.
And the total number of inbound that comes from those talks is not that high, actually. Like, very few people reach out afterwards, even if the talk's really good. And I think that's the easiest way to make those one-on-one connections. That then literally, like, I had people after the Crash Lands postmortem talk 2 years ago who sent me a note immediately, and then I met with them at GDC, and then literally I've been meeting with those people now every year when I go back.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things like when you see a really good talk or whatever else, take just 5 or 10 minutes to send someone a note about it, because they could become either just a peer for you or even like a mentor figure in terms of how you're approaching some part of the business or whatever else. And so I think there's plenty of ways to still really get a ton of value out of it. It's just that if you're doing what everybody else is doing, which is just sort of attending,
that's the kicker though, is you don't you would think I shouldn't bother sending this person a message because they're probably being inundated with messages.
Yes.
So that's what everybody's saying. And so the speakers are actually getting almost no messages at all.
Yeah.
Even a really good speaker with a room of like 300 people, they might only get a few messages afterwards.
Yeah, unless they're particularly well known. So like I imagine Rami Ismail after.
Oh yeah, but he always getting a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think people who are getting contacted just all the time already will then continue to have that happen after a talk. But literally everybody else, which is almost everybody, will not be having that.
Yeah, and honestly, like these are people just like everybody else, and so they put a lot of time and energy into preparing these talks. And then if somebody reaches out and they're like, "Hey, just want to let you know
that was good.
It was great, and I really appreciate that you took the time to put that together," then it's like, man, that feels great.
Yeah, honestly, it makes it worth it in a lot of ways. So.
Yeah. So we kind of transitioned into away from the talks, and also those are available in the vault. You can always watch them later.
Yes, although that depends on the pass.
Well, so you can just buy a vault.
Yeah. Well, when you say just buy it, though, it costs like $500.
It does, but just buying a GDC pass,
it's way cheaper than
that allows you to go.
Yeah. But if you're going and then also have to spend $500, then that's not.
But you could also
easy thing.
Just watch the YouTube channel because they take all the best talks and just put them on their YouTube channel.
Yeah. So there's nothing particular you want to see, and they don't. I don't think it's quite fair to say they take all the best talks. They take the ones that are the
most
best,
broadly sort of
the broadly applicable, and then best rated within that category, and then things that they want to use to advertise GDC so that people buy tickets for next year.
So if you're looking for really intense nuts and bolts on like production or
you won't get that
visual effects or tools, you do not see that on the YouTube channel. But you'll see the really high level. It's usually like how we designed Dark Souls, which is cool.
Yeah.
There's a few of them like that that are really good, but otherwise tend to be very high level.
Yeah.
So depends what you want.
Yeah.
But I think it is the case though that vault access is probably more important than going to GDC if you're going there for talks.
Yeah.
If your whole thing is like you just want to learn as much as you can and whatever, because you can still reach out to people who gave those talks.
Everyone includes their info on their slide.
Yeah. You don't have to like be at GDC to do that. You can't talk to them face to face, obviously, but you can send them an email and that sort of thing. So you can still get a lot out of that. I think the main value in physically being at GDC is not physically going to talks. It is
chatting
with people.
It is meeting other people eyeball to eyeball, just talking about talking about stuff and letting serendipity.
Well, so what was the takeaway this year as far as because we talked to a ton of people.
Yeah. Well, so where are we at? So first we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Google Stadia. And by that, I mean, it was literally like an elephant in the room because
there's like an elephant in every room.
It was really interesting.
So Google has never really had a presence at GDC. Yeah. They would have a booth on the expo floor.
They do their developer day thing on Monday where they talk about what new stuff
trying to get you to get into ads, basically.
Yeah, and then they would have a booth on the expo floor, and we went and tried to talk to them on the expo floor in years past, and we were essentially just kind of dismissed outright because we make premium games, and they only wanted to talk to us about our
ARPU KPIs.
Yeah, all of these acronyms that basically mean how much money are you extracting from your users every day, and we'd be like, well, none, because they already bought it, and then they'd be like, all right, well, we don't really have anything to talk about then. So historically, the primary building of GDC is this 3-story building. It's called Moscone West. And that's where all the talks happen. And historically, there have been a lot of tables and stuff for developers to congregate and like meet up after the talks and whatever. We noticed this year that the entire second floor,
which is where most of the tables usually
is where most of it. So that was always where we would post up and chat with people and set up meetings and stuff like that. Second floor was completely nuked because there was an enormous display that Google had put up for this new streaming service, which they made their announcement on Tuesday. And so the entire first day, was just like the whole floor was just kind of like blocked off and with no discernible purpose. But it was definitely clear that we're not supposed to be there. We're not supposed to sit there. This is not for the developers. This is for Google.
There wasn't even anywhere to sit. They just it was almost like they paved it. That's the way to think about it.
They put up a parking lot.
Yeah.
There used to be a forest of tables, and then they just paved it and put up a bunch of monitors.
And so already we've got this like strong metaphor here, which is like Google all of a sudden just sort of bursts into the scene after not being involved whatsoever without any regard to sort of like what has been going on historically and displaces all the developers who now have to scramble and figure out where the fuck to go all week, right? And so then on Tuesday, Google announces this new streaming service, Google Stadia, which is essentially the idea that it shouldn't matter what device you're playing on, because if with the power of the internet, you can play games on somebody else's computer, basically Google's computer.
So you just stream what it looks like,
right? Because basically the idea is in Google's mind, they're thinking a video game is essentially 2 parts: video and inputs, right? And both of those things can be sent and received over the internet,
which is totally true.
Which is true to a degree, if you exclude things like modding, right?
Yeah.
So then the idea is you would They didn't actually specify the business model, so they didn't talk about whether this would be a subscription.
They didn't talk about a lot of things.
They skipped a lot of detail, but the core of the idea is this is like, quote, a Netflix of video games, as a lot of people have been calling it. Google did not call it that.
Right.
So let's talk about what this means. The first thing is like there's conversations about there's two sort of primary concerns that gamers have. One is this modding problem, because a lot of single player games are sustained by modding communities, and if the game lives on somebody else's computer, you can't mod it. That's potentially.
We do also know some stuff that we can't say probably.
Correct.
So we have to be careful how we talk about this.
Right.
But so we'll only talk about it as if we only know what everybody else does. And that's how.
Well, I think the general concern people have is it's always the same with any of this digital media stuff, which is one of ownership, because you literally don't have
People
that's
even get second thing.
Yeah, people get a little uncomfortable even with Steam right now.
Yeah.
Which is you have a license to the game, you don't actually have the game.
Well, but that's actually been.
Where does it go when it's?
That's actually always been true. It has never been the case in the entire history of video games that when you like got a copy of a game that you owned it, in the sense of like you owning a book or something, right?
Right.
Or you don't even own a book really.
Yeah. Well, I think the difference though is that what you used to, I wouldn't say own, but what you used to have was guaranteed access.
Yeah. You didn't own it, but you did have it.
Well, no, what you had was guaranteed access. So if you had a Super Nintendo and a cartridge, then you now have Super Mario World. Like that's what you have, and nobody can take that away from you until it breaks.
So the interesting thing about a streaming only game is that if, for example, like if the game comes off that storefront at some point, it's gone. It's gone.
And this is true for always online services, which was the other thing that people
and this is
about.
different. This is different from Netflix in the sense that when you watch a show, you have watched it now, and you're like, I watched that.
You have consumed it.
I have consumed it, and maybe you'll want to revisit it later, but you don't. It's more of just like a want, kind of a thing. Whereas with games, it feels more like a need because you have these longer term hobbies, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have a game that somebody maybe plays for like 10 hours a week, and that's what their hobby is, right? And they may do that for a year, and so they're putting in hundreds and hundreds of hours, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, it's gone. So it's not like you finish it and are done and then you move on to other things on the platform. It's people go really deep into one game, and the prospect of now just having that sort of stripped away becomes it makes people a little uneasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think there's some actually really great, if anybody's interested in sort of some general good strategic thinking about this, games industry has been running a few pieces that people put together, gamesindustry.biz, about just sort of like these opinions about what this. Everyone's trying to figure out, what does this mean? Because this has tried to happen before, actually, with OnLive back in, I think, 2008 or so, which is another streaming service thing. Didn't quite work. Hatch is doing it right now on
for
mobile.
Android, yeah.
And so there's a bunch of different ways to approach this and a bunch of different questions to really get answered on both on the business side. Like, what does this mean for creators? It's sort of one of the most interesting ones. Because if you look at a service like Spotify, for example, which is all about streaming music, the artists get paid almost nothing. Literally almost nothing. I don't think you can actually sustain a livelihood just off of your Spotify list, even if you're having people listen to your songs like 1 billion times.
Yep.
It's literally not a possible thing for you to do. And so it becomes this interesting question of like, what does this mean for game development? Because how do the creators actually get money?
Well, so this is part of a larger and more worrying trend that we're kind of picking up on. Which is one thing that's generally been the case about the internet is that it creates these winner-take-all markets that tend to concentrate the wealth onto the platform. Right. So, I mean,
look at Netflix. It's an easy example.
Netflix, Facebook, Google, Apple, whatever, Amazon, whoever is kind of like the first mover into a space who does it well tends to sort of just like suck up all the oxygen in that entire sector. And it's not to the benefit of the consumers or the creators of content on the platform. It's oftentimes.
Well, it is at first.
It is at first.
Yeah.
But as things continue to concentrate upward, it becomes harder and harder for people to eke out a living on those platforms.
Well, because basically you have no leverage at some point.
Right. Yeah. Because now if on Spotify, if you're one of 100,000 artists launching an album that month, does Spotify really care if you succeed? Like, they're not invested in you, right? And so you see this thing kind of happen time and time again. And so, you know, we talked in the past about how like the median income of games on Steam was essentially approaching zero by the time they stopped talking about it. So we don't actually know what it is now. But people continue to make more and more games on Steam, so that market is becoming more crowded. Mobile is obviously crowded because has been thousands of games coming out every week. And even back around the time that we started, I think the median income of a mobile game was zero. So like as in over half of games just don't make money at all.
Which also means they lose money because they all had a development cost.
They had development cost, yeah. And so I would say that there's been an interesting tonal shift over the past couple of years as we've gone to GDC and talked to developers, where at the very beginning, you know, we started making games in 2012, and that was right on the heels of sort of like the rise of the indies, you know. So you've got like your Super Meat Boy.
Yeah, we were late to that party.
We were already late. Yeah. And folks like, you know, Rami, Ismail, like they were already sort of established, and they were already well on their way. And so we were late to that party, but we were also kind of like, we were part of that, like the baby boomers of the indie games movement. You know, like there was just all of a sudden a ton of us, and there were indie developers everywhere swarming GDC, and just, you know, you couldn't throw a rock without hitting an indie game developer. And which you shouldn't throw rocks, especially at people. So nowadays, you know, it hasn't been that long. It's been 7 years since we started.
Well, the weirdest one is, I was on a panel, one of Google's panels on Monday, talking about community development stuff, and they referred to us as old.
Yeah.
We're an old studio because
we've lasted for 7 years.
And we've
let that sink in for a second.
Yeah. And the feeling that I got, I don't know, I assume you guys had the same thing, but like, wow, while talking to so many people, there are a lot of people who were around when we started. They're gone. There were people who kind of started around the same time as us, and either they're gone or they're talking about getting out. Because they are just struggling more and more to make an impact. And
well, there were even a lot of people who were very successful because they got there when it was still good. They got in the market before we did. Who we looked up to, and like we talked to at various GDCs, who have ever since then actually been really struggling to recreate any of that.
Yeah,
the general tone has been, "Why is this so hard?
Why is this so hard?"
It hasn't gotten less like that, I guess, in the last couple of years.
It's been getting harder for everybody, no matter their level of success, basically.
Yeah, and so even like the FTL creators, you know, they made Into the Breach recently, and that was just a fraction of how successful FTL was. And we spoke with a lot of mobile developers as well, who would launch premium mobile titles, you know, back in like 2012, 2013. And it was not uncommon for a small independent premium mobile game to make, you know, upwards of $5 million, which is crazy. Like, it's crazy amount of money. And then nowadays, these same people who are actually making even better games, you know, we talk to them, and they're struggling to make over 100K with a game that takes them a couple years to make.
Yeah, which means, again, because of development costs, that they're either
the development costs are higher
or they're losing money.
Yeah. And so I mean, so yeah, we're talking about like success being now like in single digit percentages now in terms of how much income is available for premium games on mobile, especially.
So the broader context we've gotten is that we think Crashlands is sort of situated like smack in the middle of this slide
of that curve,
right?
Yeah, because it was 3 years ago, over 3 years ago that we launched Crashlands.
And so I don't know, it was an uncomfortable couple of days because I was thinking, like, because the thing is, you're talking to these people and you're recognizing that they're doing things better than your studio's doing things in a lot of ways, and they're still having a hard time.
Yeah,
and, like,
or they've got they've got history behind them, right? Yeah. They've got all these successful titles they've already put out, and then they're still having the same struggle. Because now we're looking at that, right, and we're like, well, we haven't put out a game for 3 years.
Which means we do not know the state of the market from our own.
Yeah, and the only reason that we were successful on mobile is because our bar for success was low because of where we live and how much we pay ourselves.
Well, and you know, team is, right? And if we look at some of the folks who started launching premium mobile games around the time we started our studio, and we look at them and we're like, yeah, but they got in early.
Yep.
You know, like we could say the same thing about us 3 years ago,
Yeah, exactly.
because like now it's late. You
Yeah.
know, the market is different now.
Yeah.
So
it was a bit gloomy, I would say.
it was. Well, I mean,
For a couple days.
It forced a lot of soul searching in terms of like when it comes to Levelhead. You know, we've still got our Steam early access plan, and we're really pushing on this thing as being a like a premium big screen experience. You know, but we still want to figure out how to bring it to mobile. But man, like
the reality of that business is not looking super hot right now, I think. Which is, we were entertaining a lot of different ways to make that happen in a way that wouldn't like be dumb for us as a studio, but it's looking it's a little bad.
look pretty dumb.
Yeah. So I don't know. We've been thinking about it a bunch. We haven't just settled on anything yet, but I think that was the shakeup this year, which was, we go in, we're like, yeah, we'll put Levelhead on every single thing. And then we leave and we're like,
what's the fewest things we can put it on instead? Well, and that's part of the problem too, right? Is as much as we kind of came from mobile and we love the idea of being able to play games on our phones and so on. The fact that market doesn't give a fuck about us, right? Like, we know that a subset of our players do, absolutely, and this is where the rub comes in. Right? It's like the only reason we would now want to put out a game on mobile is actually just because like a subset of our fans would want to play it there. But it might not be a good business move at this point because it requires, I think it's a development problem, right? Is right now the game basically works on mobile, right? Like it works actually fine, but it doesn't have all the mobile friendly features built into it. We haven't tuned it, and that's a big development cost. And then there's a question is like,
and then maintenance,
everything else is and we've been dealing with this on other platforms that we're on with Crashlands that literally just are a straight cost to us. That again, we went there because we're like, oh, some of our players want it there. We want to make sure our players are happy, and now we really regret putting that on those platforms, right? Because they just are a bureaucratic nuisance, basically that just directly increases our dev costs. And that's kind of what mobile's starting to look like.
It's just for premium,
right. Exactly, yeah,
because it's still the case too that we know that the top grossing mobile games are all free to play games.
And they're doing great.
They're still doing great, and those top grossing charts, which I still don't know why they showed that, but the top grossing charts have been fairly static for forever.
Long time,
and that's also as we were speaking with some other folks who work kind of in this area, we're talking about this problem of like, because of the static nature of these stores, people tend to just not go there anymore. There may be 7,000 new games every week, but if you want to find the good stuff, you're going to go to the charts, and if the charts are always the same, then you kind of
go.
You're not going to go in there.
So I think it's been it's just been very uncomfortable. I think we did. I think Monday I was pretty down. I think the meetup was probably the only thing where I was like, thank God that happened today. And then we're trying to figure it out. So I think this is just one of those those behind the curtain little peeks at the shit we're dealing with over here, and how we're trying to figure it out. And I guess the general point is that it's the sense that we've gotten is that you can make a bigger, better game than you did 3 years ago.
And it'll do far worse.
Yeah. No matter what you do. So,
and that's true on all platforms. Well, unless you get really lucky, or you change your tactics,
Well, this actually reminds me. Quite a while back, we were speaking with some friends of ours who work on the press side, and who they're journalists. They write articles and stuff, and their site is funded by ad revenue, as are most sites, and they were talking about how sort of like in their perception, the middle was falling out of the industry. This was a few years back, but basically like there were fewer and fewer mid-sized studios, and you either had AAA with the big exclusive deals and 300-person development teams, et cetera,
infinite ad money and
and those people are essentially fueling their games by pumping money into user acquisition, right? And they make the free-to-play games that just have infinite ways to spend money and loot crates, like anything goes, whatever maximizes revenue, right? So you got those people.
But you also have to have, and those same people are also driving up UA costs, right? Because if they're making on average, $20 per user because of all the IAPs they have,
then they can
afford to pay $15 to acquire a user. And then those of us who can only make, $6 on a user or whatever, we can't compete for any of that UA cost.
Yeah.
And this is what we saw. This is becoming an increasingly large problem where basically everybody we talk to who's trying to solve this problem and get around, they're basically just like, yeah, we just can't afford. We can't afford to do user acquisition. We can't afford to do ad spending. Even if we had the money laying around, it actually just is only a net negative, right? And so it's
because you bring in 10,000 people and then you lose $3 a person.
Yeah,
it's not good.
So that's
that's the trick of it, right? Is that in order to sell a game, if the store is not doing it for you, then you have to spend ad money. But if you can't recoup that,
you need a high enough income per player to justify it. Yeah.
And so I think this is actually the core reason why this is falling apart, particularly on mobile, is because you can't do UA on mobile. It's literally impossible because the cost of it has been driven up so high.
There's the guy who's on the panel with me at the talk was like, that's his thing. He's a small indie publisher, and he basically figured out, he came from Congregate, right? It's like he knew more of that sort of mobile space and the ad nature of things, and so he publishes just a ton of mobile games, and he actually does manage to do really good UA for them, like in terms of buying users essentially to funnel them in. And he gave a whole talk on it because he was trying to get to this point, which is like, and we've talked about this before, like if you want to be successful, you look at what unsuccessful people are either doing or not doing, and then you sort of pick the things that are the opposite of those. And one of those that seems to be coming up repeatedly now is somehow figuring out how to do UA as an indie studio, right? How do you actually manage that? And he had sort of figured it out. He's been doing it pretty effectively.
Is this with free to play titles?
I believe so, but they don't. His total, like his average revenue per user ends up being like 50 cents or something because it's mainly ad driven. So he's figured out how to do this using like a huge, like 6 different ad networks. Like it's a machine that he's building.
Well, basically, that's your job.
It's a full time job is just playing the numbers game.
Exactly. So then what studio can afford, like on the mid to small scale, right? Is now to be able to afford to hire somebody whose full time job is to find out how to do UA at a low enough cost, including their salary. To be able to make that work, right? And of course the bottom is falling. We
the thing is
we can't compete.
Yeah. So this is where the idea that the middle is falling out, where if you're a hobbyist or a solo developer, you might be able to like be okay generally, right? But once you get 10 people on staff, your likelihood of success doesn't necessarily go up.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So
or the scale of your costs sure do.
Your costs go up by tenfold or more because of now the overhead of getting an office and everything else, right?
So I don't know. The only silver lining I think for us was 2 things. One is that everyone we showed Levelhead to was like, one, I don't know how this is going into early access because it looks done. Like that was the general response. We're like, excellent. We're like, it's exactly where we want to be.
That's great, but we still got more.
Yeah, going into early access. And then 2 was that I think that it's provoked a lot of these really interesting studio conversations, which frankly are annoying to be having right now because we're breathing down the neck of this launch in like a few weeks.
And now suddenly we're like, well, what are we going to do about mobile?
Yeah. And
the original plan was just like, we'll just launch it on mobile. That was like, it was so easy.
But apparently you don't do that anymore.
So now we got to figure that shit out. But it has been provoking a bunch of interesting conversation. And like, I think, again, being able to adapt is 90% of the game here when it comes to staying alive.
Yeah, because we could just throw ourselves on our sword, and just be like premium only, and if that's how we go down, then we're going down.
But that serves literally no one at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, but we don't have any clue of how the early access launch will go. So if that goes super great, then then this makes these questions easier. But if it goes super terribly,
makes them harder.
Because now mobile would be the thing that we would have to figure out to sort of save the game, right? So we don't know.
Shit's weird.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it'll be the Switch thing that saves us.
It might be.
Could be.
So I got to put your eggs in all these baskets.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But not too many baskets because you got to don't put them in the shitty baskets.
Some of those baskets have holes in them, and the egg just falls right through.
Yeah,
and that's
what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on to some questions. These questions come from our listeners over at podcast.bscotch.net. If you'd like to get your question onto a future episode, go there. First question comes from CreatorRedA. What's the coolest thing about using Gamemaker, and what's the most annoying?
What is?
I guess you can speak to this after playing with Unity this weekend, probably.
Yeah. I was poking around in Unity this weekend just to kind of because I realized I'm actually not that good of a programmer in the traditional sense. I can program around do circles around anybody in Gamemaker. But once I go into a different environment, I'm just not as familiar with the structures and the syntax. So I was like, I really need to shore this up. So I started playing around in Unity and started working on a 3D prototype of Roid Rage just to kind of like see how it all works. And the great thing about Gamemaker is that everything that you want to do only takes at most like 3 steps. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to play a sound, you just import the sound, and then anywhere in an object or a script or whatever, you just use like audio play sound, name of sound, and it will play, and you're good, right? Same with drawing a sprite. Import a sprite anywhere in the code in a draw event. You just put draw sprite. Done. You did it now, right? And in Unity, oh my god, it's like a waking nightmare. It's, you can't just do that. You've got to like create a game object and attach components to it and load the thing in there and create a script and drop the script onto there and then load the audio into the script. It's like, I don't know how people put up with it, frankly. But, it has this really strong structure. Unity does, right. Because also it's in C#, so it has typed variables. So like you have integers and floats and like very specific types of numbers. And you do have
Booleans, which is nice.
Well, it's nice, except it sucks. Because like in Gamemaker, Booleans are numbers. It's 1 and 0. Mm-hmm. So I can actually do like, you can add. So I could say like a turn direction is negative keyboard press left plus keyboard press right. Because because they evaluate as 1 or 0. Yeah. And so I can, in one line, I can take all the inputs for moving left and right. And in Unity, it took me 12 lines, right? Because I have to actually like evaluate them and then change the turn direction based on the if statements.
Yeah.
So,
or just cast them.
Yeah, or cast them. Yeah. Which again is annoying. Like, can't I just use them as I want to?
Yeah. Well, is that age old debate between static and loosey goosey typing?
Right. Because the looser it is, the more you can just kind of skip a lot of steps.
Yeah. The looser it is, the more fun it is.
Yeah.
The stricter it is, the less likely you get into trouble.
Yeah. Well, and this I think speaks to our size, right? Because like if you have a strongly typed language, which means that like you don't just have numbers, you even have certain types of numbers. Mm-hmm. And those types of numbers can only do certain things.
And for reference, Gamemaker has one kind of number called a real.
Yeah.
And then a string.
Yeah.
Those are its only 2 things.
Those are its only 2 things. And so that's great because you can do whatever you want with those numbers. You can add them together, divide them, you can store them, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's annoying when you want to like write good JSON to like send to a web service because since there's no such thing as a Boolean. Then it just writes a 1 followed by 1,000 zeros.
Yeah. It's like, 1.000.
This is true. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Well, minor annoyances.
Minor things like that. But yeah, so I mean, the sort of forced structure of something that you see in Unity allows for more team collaboration.
Why is that?
It's because
you gotta explain that coupling.
Yeah, it's because if everything is loose and there's no rules, then you as a team have to have incredible discipline around your code. Because if anybody can do anything to anything, then you have this unpredictable sort of spaghetti mess of code. And as like time pressures build, that discipline can sort of go away. Because people need to cut corners and just get the code working and then like get the product out.
Yeah. Well, there's also the idea of being cute when you write your code, which and being cute is basically saying like, trying to do as much as you can in one line, for example, just because you can, or these kinds of things where, we're all guilty of it, but when you're in a loose language, you can do like JavaScript, you can get real fucking cute.
Yeah.
And the cuter you get, the more your language becomes as the joke, or your code becomes read-only code, right? Or sorry, write-only code.
As in nobody knows.
As in nobody can read it. And this is like, there are these things like with the idea of a ternary operator, which is this whole, it collapses an if-then statement into like one line, just using like a question mark and a colon, right?
But then you can't fucking read it.
And so there's like, most standard like ways of coding for languages that have that operator basically say just like do not use it. They actually their IDEs will even throw errors if you use, even though it's valid syntax. They'll throw errors.
This is too cute.
Yeah, it's too cute. Don't do it.
Don't be cute.
Am I like in JavaScript since I'm using JavaScript is loose typed also. It's got ternary operators. Like I'm being cute all the time because I can, and it's so fun. It's so fun just to be like, what can I pull off here? Like like you have some logic puzzle you need to do, and you start writing this really verbose shit, and you're like, I don't want anybody to read this.
And then you just
one line it in one go, right? And this makes your stuff unreadable.
Yeah, it's the difference in design between designing for the player versus designing for yourself, right? Just like, look how cool this is that I made. Versus
and somebody looks at that and their eyes immediately cross.
Yeah.
So I think Gamemaker, its strength is its weakness, right? Its strength is how loose it is, which means it's really fast to do almost anything.
Obscenely fast.
But as soon as you bring in another person onto the team, they're looking at all this weird loosey-goosey code you've written, and they're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at, right? So that would be my verdict.
Right. Yeah.
Speed, but at a cost. Next question comes from Flyhoppie Axerompa, which is another programming question, which is a few episodes ago, we spoke about branching and merging different versions of the project. I found this really hard to do in Gamemaker. I'd end up just copying and pasting manually, and it takes forever. I'm using Gamemaker 1.4, so maybe it's better in 2. How about some tips or best practices for doing this more effectively? So 2 tips. 1, switch to Gamemaker 2.
Yeah.
Gamemaker 1.4 is no longer even supported, so your project is going to run out of steam real fast.
And it doesn't have an IDE, it just has a text editor.
Yes. So everything about Gamemaker 2 is better. And then if you find yourself having a hard time with merging, then get a merge tool. Use SmartGit. It's a program that actually does like a really nice comparison, and it shows you the different things, and you just click on which one you want to keep, and you can edit stuff right in there. Boom.
I'm pretty sure there are free ones also.
There's free ones. SmartGit is like $3 a month or $6 a month. So
it's one of those things. It's a low enough cost with a high enough benefit that
probably worth
just
it.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to save you well over an hour a month.
Yep.
And that's not the thing to think about these is when there's things that are really annoying because of how finicky they are. If you manage to cut them out completely, you save actually much more time than you'd imagine.
Yeah.
Because the rage induced.
You save all the stress.
Yeah. By like having to handle that shit is just, it'll mess up your work.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to automate as many things as possible. So if you find yourself copy pasting stuff manually,
you're losing so many.
You're losing time because you're doing that manually, and you're losing time because you're going to mess that up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And later you'll come across something and you'll be squinting at it. You're like,
and if you're like me, you'll be mad the entire time you're copy pasting.
Yeah.
The one thing to be aware of with Gamemaker 2 and Git is because of how it stores all of its stuff and its kind of main project file. It's not exactly Git compatible because Git compares things on a line by line basis, and so it stores files as just like this really verbose JSON, which means many lines are just like an end curly brace. Right in that thing. So now in Git, if you're trying to figure out which end curly brace that is, does it belong to the stuff right before it, or does it belong to this other stuff? It can't fucking know the difference. There's no way for it to know the difference, and so that leads to some headaches.
It does. Once you kind of get the feel for it, though, it's not too bad.
It's easy to resolve.
Yeah.
But it happens frequently.
But first step, always just get a good tool.
Yep.
So which means get out of Gamemaker 1.4, get into Gamemaker 2, and get some kind of diff tool.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from cdcMully. Empty your pockets right now. Anyway,
oh God,
I'm just gonna feel them.
Anyone carrying anything weird or cool? Aside from my wallet and keys, you can almost always find a pen and a specific pocket knife on me every day. Do you have any interesting everyday carry items?
I always have a pen, and I try to always have chapstick. You never know.
I always have chapstick, and I try to always have a pen.
There you go.
So I kind of reverse the priority on those two.
Yeah. I don't have chapstick, but I do have a pen.
Otherwise, honestly, one of my favorite things is not having anything in my pockets.
Yeah, I prefer to have as little
because I feel like it's almost irresponsible,
yeah.
Because like I got pockets, I could put stuff in there, but if I don't on one day, it's like I'm cut loose.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be a free man.
I normally have the pocket knife because somebody always needs something open.
Yeah, I do too. Because
every day,
because of plane travel, I forgot to.
Yeah, exactly. I unloaded my pocket knife to go to GDC, and I haven't reloaded it into my kit.
Yeah, because normally it just moves pants, Like when you change pants, you just transfer all your stuff. But now my pocket knife is just somewhere else, and so it doesn't get to go along for the ride.
I would like, but this does make me think though, because there's this like everyday carry movement of people who are like weirdly sort of focused on having everything that they might possibly need in a day in their pockets, but in such a way that it takes up the least amount of space. It's like a min-maxing challenge. What I want to see is like something that's the opposite, which is people who take the challenge of like what you said, Sam,
how
which
little
is
can you get away with?
To carry absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Honestly, if you're the sort of person like, because I almost always have stuff in my pockets, try not having anything in your pockets.
And just walk around and just think like.
I've even stripped down my key ring so that all I have on my keys is one house key because I changed all my locks to be the same lock.
Nice.
My car key, and I don't carry the fob, that lets you remotely do stuff. which drives my wife crazy, but I'm like, I don't want it in my pocket. So you just have to wait until I physically get in there and unlock the door.
Might push it a little far, but okay, keep going.
It's like it only costs an extra 2 seconds for all parties, you know. So
it's very fun.
And then I've got my fitness center like tiny little scan card thingy, which I kind of want to get rid of because I'm pretty sure I could just tell them who I am and that would be fine too. And then my YubiKey, which is that
it's your lock.
My little
it's like a key for your computer.
It's a little 2-factor device for computers, which is really rad. And that's all it's on. And for a while, until I got my YubiKey, all I had was just my 1 car key and my 1 house key.
I will say, people who have keys that are huge,
just giant,
drives me insane.
What are you? Yeah, what are you, like a night shift janitor locking up the building? What are you doing? Come on.
Yeah. Well, and then even the keys. So Seth found a while ago these. I think they're called like anti-gravity keys or something ridiculous. But they're just aluminum keys.
They're just light.
So they weigh basically nothing. And
Does it
so
feel like
ever
it's
since
snap though, every time I use that one, I was like,
feels fragile. But I got like all my
then
locks.
You think
all my
that's
locks
what airplanes
replaced.
are made of. And cans.
There you go.
yeah.
Are airplanes made of aluminum?
They probably
have some in there.
I think they're made out of aluminum honeycomb. You know, it's kind of
aluminum. You get those aluminum bees.
Yeah. They're hard to wrangle.
They are. Yeah, they're very dangerous.
They're very irresponsible too. Yeah. But I will say, I mean, I think it was a couple weeks because I would always bring my phone to the gym, you know, so I could like track my workouts and stuff. And one day, a few weeks back, I went to the gym with nothing, just nothing, not a pen,
just a man and some steam,
not a front, yeah. And it was kind of interesting. I felt very good, and I felt like I had a secret.
Yeah,
where
honestly,
the people around me, they're carrying all this stuff, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't have anything. If something happens, I'm completely unprepared. I have no way to resolve any situation that hits me. And I feel kind of good about it.
Yeah. But we're in the middle of civilization, you know, like worst case scenario is you borrow somebody else's phone and call somebody who can resolve your situation.
It's been so long that smartphones have been around. I only remember like 2 numbers.
There is that.
So hope, and those people rarely answer their phones.
Yeah, there is
guys.
I know my wife's number.
Yeah.
That's the only phone
I know my
number
wife's
I know.
number. I know my wife's number. I know you guys' numbers, but my wife's number is the only one that I can count on.
I actually don't know your new number.
Oh, nice.
I think I know yours because yours is almost mine.
But I still have my...
for some reason, completely fucking different. And I was like, because we got them all at the same time.
That's true, yeah, they're all the same. Yeah. But I still have my old, because I have a Google Voice number, which I use predominantly. And so that's actually been unchanged for 12 years.
Yeah, but every time I call it one, you don't answer it. So I call your actual phone.
There is that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
there is that.
I don't answer either of them. So...
I have you stored in my phone. One of them is Adam Brother. The other one is Adam Goog, which is your Google
Voice number,
which I never call.
But they both go to the same place, so there's actually not a relationship between the
good to know.
They go to the same place, which is nowhere.
Which is to my phone that I then do not answer.
Yeah. So why carry your phone with you if you will never answer it?
I care to check mail. That's its purpose. Really.
That's it.
Yeah. I just want a portable Gmail.
What you need is not a smartphone, but like a
medium,
almost
phone.
like a pager, but just like because smartphones are super tiny now, right?
Well, not anymore. They're
but they're thin, right?
Yeah.
And they're completely screen. So what you need is a super tiny screen that's about the size that a screen was on a pager.
I think you mean a BlackBerry. You just want a BlackBerry.
No, something that's basically like the size of like a USB flash drive, you know, but it's just
the
a
tiny
little
ones or like the
little one, yeah. And it's just like
those get real small too.
No, kind of like your YubiKey,
okay,
you know, like an inch long.
And
then it's just a screen, and it just checks your email, and you can just read your email on it.
That seems hard to read
line by line.
You just put it on your key ring. You're good to go.
You just kind of
I think there's something super nice about just not having anything in your pockets, because as much as it is that terrifying feeling of vulnerability, there's also that feeling of like, I could not be called responsible for anything.
Exactly.
Right?
You're free now.
I got no capability to help with anything going on.
I can't even get somebody into a building if I need to. I got no keys. I got no.
Just got nothing.
Somebody.
It's like being a kid again. Nobody relied on me.
And you're like, if I'm tempted to buy something,
kids don't need keys or wallets. The fuck are they going to buy?
That's true. That's what the feeling is. You're like, I'm being completely irresponsible, and nobody can count on me for anything right now. And this is nice.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah. Childhood.
Maybe that, yeah. So this needs to be like instead of the everyday carry movement, there needs to be the can movement, which is carry absolutely nothing.
Actually,
and you just.
My neighbor has a keypad entry that he just installed. Like, Maybe I should go.
Yeah, I thought about doing that. They make me nervous for some reason, even though it can't be any less secure than an easy to pick lock.
Not. Yeah.
So probably more secure.
It might be
because he also gets alerts on his phone.
But what happens when it dies? Then how do you get in? Because now you don't have your key on you. It died.
Presumably it'll tell you its battery's low.
But what if you're being irresponsible and you don't actually change the battery?
I don't know.
Then are you just
on you?
But on this note, though,
you got Windows.
This makes me think of a really good adult resort, right? Which is one where when you get there, you have to get rid of everything that indicates responsibility, right? So you give them your keys, your passport, you give them fucking everything, and their whole deal is that they will, no matter what happens, they will have your shit. They will protect your shit, and they will not let you get access to it. But they'll also be there for emergencies, so that if something out in the real world actually does happen, they can call these people, and these people will come find you, right? So now all of a sudden you've unloaded all of your life burdens, everything, all your responsibilities onto these people, and then you just don't even get to do anything. There's no internet on this whole fucking resort, right? You just go there, you give up your shit, and you get to go just be a child.
That'd be awesome.
This is real?
It's like a sandals.
I want this.
It's like a sandals.
Exactly.
Resort. We call it parents.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to parents in Cancun.
Go to parents, yeah. You just get to go have some parents for a while, right? Whose only job is to have you be a real child.
Isn't that really what a resort is?
That is
like you go there.
No, the problem is
people are cooking for you.
Oh, yeah.
People are taking care.
But they don't aggressively.
They don't take it up that notch though.
Because they let you get access to the business center.
Yeah, who the fuck?
Your parents wouldn't let you get on a computer.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
basically what you want is a
gym
resort.
in there. You should be running around outside.
What you want is a resort where you get scolded sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
for get outside
for not being on vacation.
Yeah.
Like you're on vacation, get the fuck back out on that.
Quit trying to check a page.
And also when you're when you try to order a second dessert, and they're like, you've already had a dessert. Like you were going overboard here, right?
Yeah, you're gonna feel terrible tomorrow.
Yeah, and you're
Jesus.
like, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And you order your third drink, and they're like, don't you feel like you've had too much? And you're like, yeah, you're probably right.
And they're like, go to your room.
Go to your room.
They
ground you, then you have to be pissed off about
somebody's being grumpy.
Go take a nap. Okay,
go take a nap.
True. The best advice I ever got as a kid was go take a nap.
Yeah.
Dad would always tell me that when I was freaking out. He'd be like, you just need to go take a nap. And I was like, no. And then I go take a nap. Felt immediately better.
And so did he probably.
Yeah. I was like, thank God it's gone.
God, I got this whiner out of my hair.
Hair whiners.
I shaved my head. This is so
that's why you can't get whiners
get in my hair.
That's a good plan.
Let's take one last quick question, which is from Sean. In your experience, how has the experience differed from short-term and long-term projects? Do you prefer shorter projects, or do you think you'll solely focus on the larger long-term ones? For clarity, I'd say short-term is less than a year.
Okay. Still a long time.
Pretty long.
But I get the idea. I think we like doing a mix. I think when it comes to market viability nowadays, again, given that problem of so many fucking games, I think it's much harder with a small or a short project to do enough to have more of an easy sort of
Well, I think
it's hard in both cases.
Oh, it's hard in both cases.
I think actually if we were to play the game properly on mobile, then the right move would be as short-term projects as possible with as many IAPs as possible.
That's correct.
It's like a 3-month max.
Yeah.
Dev cycle.
Just churn those things out. Yeah.
Don't even worry about launching marketing. Just
just ad spend.
Launch that thing, spend money on user acquisition, pump it up the algorithms, and then move on to the next one.
Sounds like a real joy.
Yeah.
Exactly what I got into this business for.
Yeah. I think the problem with a larger investment of like a month or whatever, because games are fucking expensive to make.
I've seen the expensive actually.
So if you're going to spend 6 months or a year on a project, and now all of a sudden you can't recoup? Is it recoup or recoup? I don't actually know which one it is.
Depends on how you're feeling. Because if you're gonna how French you're feeling today.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're gonna have a coup and take over something, that's clearly a coup.
And if you're gonna have a re-coup, then you gotta
take another coup, do it again, right?
So that means you messed something up after the first coup. Now
it must be recoup, but I know people say recoup.
Yeah, I don't actually know.
But it's probably because they're just Americans. Not pronouncing every letter of a French word like an American.
What do we think? You're supposed to pronounce as few of them as possible.
What about recalp?
Recalp.
So if you can't recalp your payment.
So if you can't recalp it, because the chance of you being able to recalp, 6 months worth of development on a premium title in the mobile space is not great. And then if you keep on extending that runway out, now you're just throwing more good money after bad, as they say, or good money after bad. That's the one.
Because your first money was bad. The rest of your money that you still have is
good until you put it in there. And now
it's bad now.
Yeah.
because it's gone.
Because it's gone. So
That's the worst kind of money.
it really is.
but I think that's generally true actually when it comes to market viability these days, because there's so many games coming out and your chances of success are so middling at best.
Low. You could say low.
That you have to. The idea is you have to put in just enough. The project has to be just big enough that people, when they see it, are like, "Oh, that looks like a real game." Right? Like I feel like this is this isn't just garbage that you made or whatever. This is an experience I get to have. That feels polished and finished. And the moment you hit that mark, I think it has to go into the market, because any more time you spend after that, just increases your cost without increasing the likelihood that you have an actual market success.
Yeah.
Good enough principle in action.
Yep. So I think that's what I would say.
I like working on jam games. That's like the smallest project.
But that's just bringing us back to being a kid again.
Yeah,
because it's not for market viability. You have no responsibilities. Yeah, you don't have to reach out to your business partners. You just say like, I'm making a thing. It just is what it is.
I made this. Take it or leave it. Get out of my face.
Yep.
I'm trying.
I made this for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think part of it is that fixed cost of making a game. Yeah. It's all in the months leading up to market. Because we made Roid Rage in like under 20 hours of development time, even including the multiple ships and everything. And then we put it up on Google Play. We just put it up, and I think we made maybe like $12 on it or something.
Gotta be that UA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you can do it, but if you don't do the marketing part, then you kind of miss.
Then none of it matters.
Or the part where people can pay you money.
Oh, that's another.
We're also real bad at that.
That's another part that a lot of businesses do.
They do that. We'll work on that part.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because then the longer the project, the less of the project goes into marketing in terms of time scale. If you take 2 years to make your game and your last 2 months is that like ramp up marketing launch thing.
And simultaneously, the more market success is required to pay off all that dev cost. And also to have enough money to do the next project, assuming the next project is of similar scope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
this is hard. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is like, the bigger the project, the easier it is to sell it in terms of it looks bigger and people can get more excited about it,
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean you're going to sell more of it.
Nope.
And also you have to sell a lot more because you took more time. So they both are hard.
Yeah. Different reasons.
For different reasons. Yeah. So just do whatever you think is best and whatever you can. And then, try to make the most of it. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good note to end on.
I think so.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we've got merch, which, by the way, is currently on fire sale because we're clearing it out.
People are buying stuff, too. The box is disappearing. Actually, box missing from over there.
Yeah, we slashed all the prices of everything down by a crap load.
Yeah. Basically, as far as we can make them
in a lot of cases, half. In some cases, far more than half, to the point where we're actually just like losing money on the items, but we just need to get rid of them. So we're just trying to make some of our money back without taking a total loss. But just know that you're doing us a favor by getting this merch out of our office.
We're doing you a favor by clothing you in fantastic goods.
And they're
the only problem is that all the most popular shirt sizes are basically gone
already.
I mean, they already were when we started.
There we go.
There's still a lot of shirts, just not necessarily the size you want.
Yes.
So if you're good at sewing, now you've also got
selling this.
You've also got a good hobby project now. So it's a double win. You get some awesome shirts on the cheap, and then now you have a hobby you can get.
If you or your best friend is a tailor, you can get a bunch of small shirts,
or a seamster or seamstress.
Yeah, a bunch of small shirts, stitch them together. Get one large shirt, cut it down.
Yep,
it's
amazing.
Whatever it is you got to do, you've got the material. We're providing the material.
This is on rolls of fabric that have our studio printed on them.
Yeah, we're moving away from the shirts industry.
Going into wholesale fabric,
just straight fabric, branded fabric. So that's our next.
Make your own fucking shirt. It's just like Levelhead, It's like tired of making games for you. Make your own levels. Make your own shirt.
We've got a new shirt builder.
We'll provide the raw materials. And that's it. We can even throw in enough pins that you could probably like pin it together.
Then we'll go out to events and just see all these people wearing these like janky
gnarly shirts
that they've sewed themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yep. So anyway, that's all over at podcast.bscotch.net. So just hop on over there. We got links to everything. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye. Bye.